This is the 20th broadcast in the series America Looks Abroad, presented by the officers and staff members of the Foreign Policy Association. This nonpartisan organization, open to all who are interested in American foreign policy, offers accurate information on current world events. In the world of today, foreign affairs are your affairs. Germany is striving to form a European bloc capable of bringing the war to an early close. Mr. John C. DeWilde, Research Associate of the Foreign Policy Association, will discuss the question, can Germany dictate peace? Mr. DeWilde.
Good afternoon. Easter ordinarily brings glad tidings. The news from the European front, however, hardly carries the hope of real peace. This past week started off with a dramatic conference between Hitler and Mussolini, with all its uncertain implications for the future. It also witnessed an intensification of air warfare. In France, a growing demand for more active prosecution of the war brought in a new cabinet under the leadership of Paul Reynaud. And in Rome, our own Under-Secretary of State, Sumner Welles, finished his European journey in a frame of mind that was probably anything but optimistic. We don't know what went on in that 2.5-hour conference between the Führer and Il Duce in the heart of the lovely Tyrolean Alps, but we can get some inkling if we keep in mind the respective positions of Germany and Italy. The Nazis heaved a sigh of relief when the Russo-Finnish peace was concluded. They dreaded the prospect of Allied armed intervention in the north. They knew that Germany, with her limited economic resources, could hold out only if she were not compelled to fight on the same scale as in the World War. Now that the Finnish war is ended, the German government can breathe more easily. It won't have to send a large army into Sweden to safeguard access to the vital iron ore supplies of that country. Berlin is still disturbed, however, by the possibility of war in the Balkans and the Near East. Germany has watched with suspicion the concentration of French and British troops in Egypt, Palestine, and Syria. She knows that these garrisons, which are still being reinforced, are intended to stiffen the backs of the Balkan countries in resistance to German demands, or to provoke hostilities which would cut her off from Russian and Romanian oil. Very likely, Hitler discussed this situation in considerable detail with Mussolini. It is highly improbable that the Führer asked Mussolini to join him in war now. Italy's participation would immediately bring about that extension of hostilities which Germany is anxious to avoid. Turkey has an alliance with Britain and France which obliges her to help the Allies the moment war breaks out in the eastern Mediterranean. In such an event, the whole of the Balkans would soon become the scene of armed conflict. No, Germany would simply like to see Italy pursue a course that is sufficiently uncertain to keep the Allies from undertaking anything in the Near East. We should remember that Italy occupies a rather strong strategic position in this area. She lies directly across the main Allied supply lines in the Mediterranean. From Albania, she could march her troops across northern Greece in the direction of the Turkish Straits. In Libya, next door to Egypt, she has between 150,000 and 200,000 troops, which could keep the British forces near the Suez Canal completely immobilized. Thus, as long as France and Britain haven't made sure of Italy, they will be reluctant to start any hostile move in the Near East. Hitler's conferences with Il Duce probably had one more objective. Germany would like to see more friendly relations restored between Italy and Russia. There's talk of extending the Rome-Berlin axis to Moscow. Before Italy's alignment with Nazi Germany and before the ill-fated Anti-Comintern Pact, Moscow and Rome were on fairly good terms. Recently, however, the Italian government and press have freely expressed their hostility toward Soviet Russia. They have been alarmed about the revival of Russian ambitions in the Balkans, which Italy has always considered as her sphere of interest. The Italians have emphasized their desire to protect Romania and Hungary against any threat of Russian aggression. The German government would like to pour oil on these troubled waters. Its task, however, is difficult. It must not only overcome the influence of the Vatican, but persuade Rome that Moscow really does not intend to advance into the Balkans for the time being. Russia's plans are therefore of crucial importance in this German maneuver. Now that the Soviet Union has acquired the strategic strongholds which secure it against attack in the northwest, it might logically launch a similar campaign in the southeast. It might try to recover Bessarabia at Romania's expense, thus advancing Russia's borders to the Danube, and then demand control of the straits of the Bosporus and Dardanelles from Turkey. In this way, Russia could secure the whole Black Sea area against intrusion by any hostile power. The Nazis, however, may be expected to use whatever influence they have in Moscow to dissuade the Russian government from such a course. They don't want to see Russia embroiled in another war. Last month, they finally reached an agreement with Moscow on a long-term program providing for the exchange of essential goods. They hoped that the Russians would at last furnish them with the oil, the manganese, the phosphates, and the fodder which Germany badly needs if she is to withstand a blockade. Now, the difficulties of carrying out these scheduled Russian deliveries are already immense. Transportation alone is a big problem, but the chances that the obstacles will be overcome are certainly much greater if the USSR remains at peace. As a matter of fact, Stalin and his colleagues may see eye to eye with the Germans in this question. Moscow probably realizes that an advance toward the Straits will be resisted by Turkey, and that the British and French would then immediately join the fray. An Allied air attack on Russia's vital oil fields in the Caucasus would be the first result. If Germany were successful in bringing about an informal or formal coalition with Rome and Moscow, she would undoubtedly try to convert it into a continental economic bloc. The Balkans would then have no alternative but to join such a bloc, perhaps in return for guarantees by the three powers to respect the territories of the Balkan nations for the time being. After the Finnish War, the Balkans are more reluctant than ever before to rely for protection on such distant powers as France and Britain. At present, Romania is feverishly strengthening her own defenses and still striving to maintain her precarious neutrality. Only the other day her foreign minister declared that Romania would not put her natural wealth at the disposal of any one power, presumably meaning Germany. But if Moscow, Rome, and Berlin line up together, Romania will have to accept the dictates of that bloc, and so will every other country in southeastern Europe. The German aim is clear. It is to avoid fighting. She does not want to waste her slender resources in manpower and material in extensive warfare. This time she would like to keep her peasants on the farms, in order to prevent the drastic drop in food production which helped to starve her out during the World War. And Germany also needs her workers in the factories, rather than on the battlefield, so that she can produce goods for exchange against essential imports from all of neutral Europe. Given time, the Nazis are confident that they can build up their supply lines to Russia and to the southeast, and really create that continental economic bloc under German leadership of which they dream. And granted success in this endeavor, the German government hopes in the end to wear out the Allies and compel the conclusion of peace. As yet, there is no prospect that Germany will succeed. True, the British and French peoples don't like the way the war has gone so far, but their disappointment has not yet taken the form of defeatism. The prevalent mood is not for peace, but for more war. In Britain, a growing body of opinion is demanding that a 71-year-old Chamberlain retire in favor of a younger and more vigorous leader, or that he at least bring new blood into the cabinet. In France, the same demand has already borne fruit. Premier Daladier, who has been accused of lack of initiative and imagination, has given way to Paul Reynaud. The new Prime Minister is known as a man of great vigor, who acquired a reputation by straightening out the disordered public finances of his country. He is an uncompromising opponent of Germany. We don't know yet how long the new cabinet will last. The right has taken Monsieur Reynaud to task for including a number of socialists, and many members of Monsieur Daladier's party dislike to see their chief displaced. But these political differences do not indicate any division of opinion about the need to carry on the war. In determining to continue the war, the Allies are still in a strong position. Despite their recent reverses, they have not yet lost the struggle for control of neutral Europe. They have at their disposal an important economic weapon, control of the raw material supplies on which so many European neutrals depend. This is true of Scandinavia and to some extent of the Balkans. All these neutrals need rubber, cotton, wool, and other materials which the Allies can cut off. Take Italy, for example. The recent Anglo-Italian dispute over German coal shipments demonstrated how dependent Italy is on continued imports of coal by sea. The Allies may therefore discount any threat of Italian intervention, knowing that Italy is much less self-sufficient than Germany. By blockading both entrances to the Mediterranean, the Allies might reduce Italy to impotence. So Italy may not be so valuable to Germany after all, nor is it sure that the Germans can count on Russia. The Soviet Union may want to prolong the war in order to exhaust capitalist Europe, but she can hardly be interested in having a powerful and victorious Germany at her door. The reserves of the Allies are still immense. The German counter-blockade of Britain hasn't been very successful. The Germans have sunk many ships carrying supplies to Britain, but by no means as many as they did in 1917, after they started unrestricted submarine warfare. They have also damaged and sunk quite a few warships, but it must be remembered that the margin of Anglo-French naval superiority over the Germans is considerably greater than at the outset of the World War. Certainly, the French and British peoples are far better supplied than the Germans. The hardships created for Germany by the blockade have been aggravated by the unusually severe winter. Potatoes and vegetables were frozen, and there was a marked coal shortage. The Germans, however, are a patient, long-suffering, and disciplined people. Germany is confident she can hold out for a long, long time, if only she can conserve her strength. The question is, can the Allies compel Germany to fight? The warfare on the Western Front appears rather hopelessly deadlocked, with both sides entrenched behind well-nigh impregnable defenses. They can't get at each other. And also, the likelihood that other theaters of war will develop now seems remote. Under the circumstances, we may see an intensification of air warfare. Up to the present, the Germans have apparently retained their superiority in the air. But the future may tell a different story, particularly as more and more planes are delivered by American factories. What is more important, the French and British probably have much larger supplies of high-octane gasoline, without which an air force is practically useless. So the war will go on. The Germans are still confident of victory, and the Allies are certainly not prepared to acquiesce in a peace on Germany's terms. They want an enduring peace. The French and British peoples want security against the recurrence of aggression. They prefer to fight it out, rather than accept anything which might be merely a truce. They might have taken more kindly to the mission of our Mr. Wells if it had been accompanied by assurances that the United States would guarantee and underwrite any peace concluded at this time. But Mr. Wells could give no such assurances, and so he is returning, empty-handed.
Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. John C. DeWilde, Research Associate of the Foreign Policy Association, was today's speaker in the series of programs America Looks Abroad. If you are interested in knowing the facts behind the headlines, send for a copy of the weekly bulletin written by the people you hear on this program and containing an article by Mr. DeWilde. There is no charge. Address your letter or postcard to the Foreign Policy Association, number 8, West 40th Street, New York. And tune in next Sunday to hear another speaker in the America Looks Abroad series. This is the National Broadcasting Company, RCA Building, Radio City, New York.